All right, Brian, thank you. And continuing our campaign 2016 coverage, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi in bright and early this morning
yes.
with some analysis for us. Okay, so no doubt Trump and Clinton both expanding their leads last night. But do the other candidates still have a mathematical chance at all right now?
Well, I think we've got to split who we're looking at to answer that question, Danielle, because it's the one everyone's asking today. On the Democratic side, it's very, very, very hard to see at this point how Bernie Sanders can overtake Hillary Clinton and win the Democratic nomination. If you look last night, she got at least 50%. We're still waiting on Missouri in every state. Huge win in Florida, where there's a ton of delegates at state, third largest state in the country. So Hillary Clinton really looks like she's going to be able to run away with it. But on the Republican side, yes, we're seeing Donald Trump win over and over in different states. That matters. That's why he has the delegate lead. But he's not winning huge, right? We have yet to see Donald Trump top 50% in a state. So if you look at this, he's leading the other candidates on delegates. He does have more than Ted Cruz, who's in second, as well as Kasich and Rubio. Well, Rubio's gone now, but what Rubio had. But he's not going so far away that you can be sure he's going to have enough, which could lead to a convention.
Well, we've still had Kasich and Rubio in it, and Cruz as well. So that, of course, impacts the numbers somewhat that Trump is getting. So Rubio drops out last night. Will he help Trump, or what candidate in particular do you think he will help?
Most people, I think, at first glance, think Rubio's departure helps John Kasich. They were seen as somewhat more moderate, more of a optimistic-looking kind of candidate and such. But on the other hand, Rubio was still fairly conservative. That could help Ted Cruz. He was very opposed to Trump at the end. That could maybe help the other two. But we've seen polling where we see them going other places. So it's not at all clear. We really need to see what happens there.
Yeah, and as we look forward to Utah, Arizona, what do Sanders, what does Kasich, what do they have to do to keep the front runners from just sweeping those states?
Well, look, for Sanders, it's obvious what he needs to do. He needs to do better among minority voters. You can't, in the Democratic Party, get demolished over and over with black voters, with Hispanic voters. They make up a lot of voters, and he's only winning whites usually by heavy, heavy margins. So that's clear for Sanders. On the Republican side, the trick is they just need to slow down Trump. The hope for especially Ted Cruz, who has the second most delegates, is that as you have fewer candidates, it sort of focuses the minds of the Republican Party. They say, it's Trump or me, Cruz will say. So he's going to try to make this a one-person choice. John Kasich just has to stay alive. I mean, as excited as he was to win his home state, usually winning your home state isn't seen as a huge lift. So he really needs to show he can win elsewhere. All
right, Ted's going to be joining us throughout the morning, again over on Fox Providence for more analysis of the latest Super Tuesday results. And for the latest headlines on the presidential race, just head to WPRI.com. And we have more in-depth coverage of campaign 2016 this morning. WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi joining us live in studio now to break down the results from the primaries yesterday. So certainly a big night for Hillary Clinton, winning 4 of the 5 states, currently leading with a slim margin in Missouri this morning. All right, so what does this mean for candidate Bernie Sanders now?
Well, look, I think Bernie Sanders, it's very hard, we've been talking about this, for him if he can't do better with minority voters. And that's consistently been a problem for Bernie Sanders, which means in places like Florida, in the Deep South, he's losing overwhelmingly. And that means Hillary Clinton is getting a huge lead in the delegates over him in those states. Now, he is keeping it very close. A state like Missouri, we still haven't had call this morning. But if you keep it close in some states but get blown out in the other states, that just means she's going to have enough delegates to win.
All right, so we did hear Hillary Clinton getting tough on Donald Trump in her address last night. I would imagine that will continue to be her strategy as she continues to rack up the delegates here, right?
Yes, and I think what you heard there is the difference between running in a primary and running in a general election.
Right.
Democrats are going to have a whole different set of issues that they're going to attack Donald Trump on that were harder for Republicans because of the way their party is set up to do. The ban on Muslims, it polls pretty well in a lot of GOP primary states, but nationally it might be more reservations with immigrants, things like that. And so you see there Hillary Clinton's people, some people say they actually would prefer Ted Cruz even over Donald Trump, but they think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit because Donald Trump's negatives are so high. Hillary Clinton's negatives are high too, but they're not as high as Donald Trump's.
All right, and just about an hour or so ago, we found out that the president will be announcing his pick for the nominee for Supreme Court. How do you see that impacting the race now here on out?
Well, obviously big news and something that really will matter for a long time in American history. I mean, as we know, Republicans have been very clear. They say they're not even going to take up the president's nominee, even though we don't even even know yet who he's going to put forward at 11 o'clock this morning. But I think this gives the Democrats, it gives both parties, I should say, a chance to tell their bases, look at the stakes in this presidential race. You know, for Hillary Clinton, she's going to be saying, Democrats, do you want Donald Trump or Ted Cruz potentially picking who has this lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court seat? Same thing on the other side. Republicans, do you want Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders having that choice? Or should Barack Obama have that choice this year? So it's enormously impactful decision overall, and the politics of it are very difficult and interesting for both parties. So it's really going to be interesting to watch.
All right, Ted, thank you so much. And again, the announcement will be made by the president at 11 o'clock this morning. All right, Brian, thank you. We have more in-depth coverage now of campaign 2016. WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Oh, he's been working hard all morning long, looking at all the results and figuring out what it means for the future. We're going to begin this hour with the Republicans. So John Kasich, as expected, did win his home state of Ohio last night. But what are his chances of really getting back into the race at this point?
Well, you know, for John Kasich, it's all about stopping Donald Trump from getting enough delegates so that there's a contested convention.
Right.
Where we're used to in recent decades. Usually we know by the time the convention comes around, we're sure who's the nominee is going to be. But Donald Trump is still weak enough. He is winning states, but he's not winning them huge. And so that means he may not be able to get enough delegates to have a majority at the convention. John Kasich definitely can't. It's mathematically impossible for him to get enough at this point. But what he can do, along with Ted Cruz, the third candidate, is stay in the race, keep Donald Trump numbers lower, and they hope that when the convention starts in Cleveland, the delegates in the back rooms, they'll make a deal and they'll get the nomination.
You know, for a lot of people watching this morning, you know, a contested convention is not something that we haven't seen one in a long time. When Reagan challenged President Ford, so we're talking decades ago. Rhode Island's primary is still 6 weeks away, so you know, where do we see things shaping up?
I think, Danielle, Rhode Island absolutely is going to matter, which is not something we're used to, especially now that Rhode Island's primary is all the way in late April. But as I was just saying, when you have this delegate slog, every single delegate counts, both for Trump and for the other two candidates, because it's to get to that magic majority number. And so Rhode Island, only 19 delegates at stake on the Republican side. Those 19 are still going to matter. Some estimates have Donald Trump only getting majority by 10 or so. So Rhode Island could even put him over the top or stop him from that because it's given out proportionally here. So I think that day there's other big states like Pennsylvania voting. I think they'll get more attention because there's more at stake, but they can't ignore Rhode Island. Every delegate counts at this point.
And for a state that largely has been ignored, for good reason, because it's usually decided by that, it's going to be really interesting to see.
Absolutely. And there aren't, it's tough. We've seen before, Republican primaries are relatively small in Rhode Island. So you have maybe 15, 20, 30, 40,000 votes, something, but Donald Trump would seem to be the favorite in Rhode Island based on how well he did in Massachusetts.
All right. It's going to be an interesting path ahead.
It's been an interesting year already.
All right. Thanks, Ted.